the Belated Binge podcast.
Hi, and thanks for watching Belated Binge on YouTube. Here we post mostly unedited footage from segments of our podcast series where we re-binge some of the most iconic series in recent memory that I was incredibly late on. Follow along as we're rereading the Harry Potter series and join the discussion in the comment section. If you enjoy it, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to not miss an episode. And of course, if you want to hear the episode in full, you can listen to Belated Binge wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media, become a patron for early access and exclusive bonus content. Again, thanks for watching Belated Binge.
Play-by-play.
The play-by-play segment of the Belated Binge podcast is where we recap the chapter and the events that took place on the pages. For Chapter 5, Diagon Alley, it starts off with Harry showing more of his humble and perhaps even self-doubting pessimistic nature. Quote, "It was a dream. I dreamed a giant called Hagrid came to me to tell me that I was going to school for wizards. When I open my eyes, I'll be at home in my cupboard." It's not shocking to think that now an 11-year-old boy might think, wow, that's too crazy to be true, right? Like, this feels more like there's no way something that cool could ever happen to me. I don't deserve that good thing coming into my life. There's a balance between those two things, between what a normal 11-year-old boy should think in, wow, that was too cool, that was probably a dream, and what Harry's probably thinking, more like, I literally don't deserve this to happen to me because it's good. With his upbringing, who could be shocked if that's where his initial denial came from? But it wasn't a dream. He sees Hagrid on the couch, lets an owl in the little hut on the rock, and has to internally deal with the fact that this was real. And he's stoked about it. There's some funny banter about paying the owl. We learn a little bit about wizard money, and our two new best friends set off for Diagon Alley to get Harry's school stuff. Can we just stop for 1 second, though, and think about how this plays now, today, in 2022? Young boy has large man forcefully enter the place he and his family are staying, tells him he's a wizard, assaults the other child in the house, plants himself on the couch, and gets up to take him away to some, made-up sounding magical place. Does the stranger danger talk now have to expand beyond vans and candy to include giants and wizardry? Anyway, in our story, it's not creepy. So they jump in a boat and leave the Dursleys on, the rocks out in the middle of nowhere, whatever body of water that is, and our two characters are headed to Gringotts, the bank for wizards. A couple of questions that get asked quite frequently in this fandom at this point of the story are quite obvious. If there's only the one boat, how did Hagrid get there in the night during the storm? He says he flew. But on what? Voldemort and Snape are the only characters in the series that are supposed to be able to fly without brooms. My money is on a Thestral, and he sent it back to the forest when he got there. It would have to be a particularly strong Thestral, but later he says he's too big for brooms, and I can't really think of another. I'm guessing probably not a Hippogriff. Thestrals, I think, are supposed to be stronger than them. There's also a small bit of hope that maybe it was Fox, perhaps. But again, wishful thinking. I kind of doubt it. My money's on a particularly strong Thestral. If Harry and Hagrid take the only boat, how did the Dursleys ever get off the tiny little island? Magic, maybe. Or maybe Hagrid sent the boat back to the island by magic and it's not mentioned on the page. Or perhaps he just left them there to starve or swim. Who knows? On the way, we get the iconic "you'd be mad to try to rob Gringotts" in not a Hagrid impression. And we learn that wizarding government actually exists, and in the same breath, we learn that they're pretty much incompetent. The minister is an idiot, and he constantly asks Dumbledore for advice. On a reread, this moment is almost mind-boggling. This is about the time, Cornelius Fudge, who is the minister, is, quote, pelting Dumbledore with owls every morning asking for advice. This is the same Fudge that will come arrest Hagrid against Dumbledore's wishes in the next book, yet still give Dumbledore props and reverence when Lucius Malfoy brings the suspension letter to him. The same Fudge who forces Dementors upon Hogwarts in the third book against Dumbledore's wishes. The same Fudge who denies Voldemort's return in book 4 spends all of book 5 trying to run Harry and Dumbledore's names through the mud and trying to take over Hogwarts. But that whole spiral started with Fudge looking up to Dumbledore and wanting advice every single morning, apparently. If you think about character development, this seems more like a character de-evolution for our boy Cornelius in the bowler hat. We also learn a bit more about how and why wizards are in hiding in the first place, because, as Hagrid says, everyone would be wanting magical solutions to their problems. We also learn that Hagrid has an affinity for dragons and that first years aren't allowed to bring brooms. If you couldn't tell, this chapter is a bit of an info dump. They're setting up the world we're heading into, learning some of the rules, answering some of the questions that we're bound to have, all on the journey from Iraq to London. And then we get where we're headed, the Leaky Cauldron. Clever name for a hole-in-the-wall bar. I'm actually going to go there tomorrow for $1 butterbeer night, which begs the question, what is the British bar food version of chicken wings? And is it the same for wizards, or do they have something even completely different? How's it play out? It's Thursday night. Your favorite Quidditch team is playing on the TV. That I guess wizards don't have, but semantics. Maybe they expecto projecto onto the wall and watch Quidditch that way. Who knows? You call up your buddies, you go down to the pub for some fire whiskey, butterbeers, and you eat some... what? And how many orders of them does Hagrid get? Do they just shut down the bar when he walks in? What's that tab look like at the end of the night? Does Hogwarts have a very, very progressive view on wages for a gameskeeper without a diploma? Or does he have to go do some dishes, not magically with his pink umbrella, to cover the tab? Anyway, they walk in and it takes about 2 seconds for Tom the barman to recognize Harry, and things just get crazy from there. People are swooning over him. They're wanting to shake his hand. They want to meet him. They want to shower him in attention. This boy who's been locked in a damn broom closet for 10 years just took his first steps onto wizarding soil, and he's already more popular than if Jay-Z and Beyonce were his parents. But among all the hoopla, he meets... I can't believe I wrote down the word hoopla in my notes, by the way. He meets one of his soon-to-be teachers, the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor, Quirrell. No turban, he actually shakes his hand, stuttering, rambling. At this point, there's no scar pain because there's no Voldemort sticking out of the back of Quirrell's head. But there's something weird about this dude. But what is even weirder to me is the stuttering and the stammering. Presumably, he didn't have that before he took his trip abroad. Was he even this jumpy guy then? We're told that he came back completely changed and afraid, apparently, of his own subject. But everyone was just cool with that. In a universe where Polyjuice and all these other weird transfiguration abilities exist, what was the kind of vetting that somebody like Quirrell gets when he comes back a completely different person from a gap year? It's just odd to me. But then it happens. We get into Diagon Alley. They hit up Gringotts first. Harry finds out he's basically loaded. Then they do the mysterious pickup of you-know-what in Vault 713, which is also weird that all it takes is a letter. Can goblins detect a forgery? Or should someone breaking in just fake a note from the vault's owners that they want to clean out? I don't know. Anyways, suspend disbelief. But now we've got our money, we've got our plot device for the story, and we have to wonder, was it just plot convenience so that the author could get an Easter egg in for the stone, or was Dumbledore walking down the hall at Hogwarts and see Hagrid and just say, hey, you're taking that Potter boy to the bank today, right? Mind grabbing the most highly sought after objects in the wizarding world, and I think Voldemort might actually be trying to steal from its secure vault. Thanks, I appreciate it. You saved me a 2-second apparition. No, not likely. He wanted Harry to see this exchange. What's not clear is at this point, what's Dumbledore's motivation for that? We don't know at this moment of the story how far Dumbledore has gone to suspect, Horcruxes, or the connection between Harry and Voldemort. And we certainly don't have any reason to believe that at this time Dumbledore knows or suspects Harry has to die. Unless, of course, he does. Because he's talked to the centaurs. This is the type of the thing that we would normally do over on Theory Corner on Patreon, but this week we're letting everybody in on the theory bit, so let's dig into that a little bit. The way I see it, Dumbledore's motivation for letting Harry see Hagrid pick up the stone could be one of two things, and perhaps a combination of both in some ways. One, he already knows that Harry's going to die to defeat Voldemort somehow. And two, he wants to test Harry and see what he's got, because eventually he's going to have to defeat Voldemort somehow. Shout out to Super Carlin Brothers, by the way, for this a bit of this part of the theory. We know that in Book 5, Order of the Phoenix, Dumbledore hires the centaur Firenze, or Firenze, however you say that, to replace Trelawney as divination professor when Umbridge very unceremoniously fires her and tries to kick her out of the castle, and Dumbledore says, no, get back in your room, Sybil. And it's a whole thing. That exchange aside, the hiring of Firenze in and of itself suggests a very personal relationship between Dumbledore and the Firenze himself. So we know that there was a relationship prior to him hiring him. There had to have been. We also know that Firenze is nearly killed by the other centaurs when he agrees to take the teaching post. He's banished from his, I think they call it a pack, and they literally want to kill this dude, which suggests that whatever that relationship that he has with Dumbledore, it's strong enough at this point to make that exile worth it to Firenze. We also hear Firenze later in this book tell Harry about drinking unicorn blood and the Sorcerer's Stone being in the school. But how did he know? Did the planets tell him that the stone was currently in the school hiding under a three-headed dog? Or did Dumbledore? Could they be that close to share that intimate of information? If so, would Firenze tell Dumbledore what the planets foretold about Harry? Which we're led to believe that the centaurs know he's going to be killed by Voldemort. Perhaps even that it would happen in the forest in that book. That's their whole Mars is bright tonight, and the pack yelling at Firenze for interfering with what the planets say when he goes and saves Harry from the Quirlish Voldemort drinking the unicorn blood. Some have suggested and theorized that the centaurs, being able to read the planets, know that Harry is going to eventually die in the forest at Voldemort's hand, but they might not know the exact time, so they actually might think that it's happening right then and there, and that Firenze just interfered with the planetal prophecy. So it's not that crazy to think that all of these interactions and exchanges between Dumbledore and Firenze, and the fact that the two seem to know intertwined bits of knowledge and prophecy and things, that the two they've talked to each other. Because otherwise, why would Firenze get nearly kicked to death to go teach at the guy's school? They had to have a relationship. And it's not that crazy. But instead of taking what Firenze would have told Dumbledore at face value, oh, this kid's gonna get killed in the woods by Voldemort, Dumbledore instead went into action, and he put Harry and the greater wizarding world in the best position possible for Harry's death to bring the downfall of Voldemort. And that is why he's showing him the stone right here. It's the first test along raising him and grooming him for the task that he's going to have to take on, which is either murder the darkest wizard and serial killer of the age, or be murdered by that same serial killer, essentially sacrificed for the greater good of the wizarding world. So now the testing starts. Dumbledore wants to see what Harry's got. If he puts him in a position to see the stone Dumbledore clearly suspects that Voldemort's going to be coming after, and perhaps already has. What do you mean, Zach? Well, why is the stone in Gringotts in the first place? Maybe there was a previous attempt on it, and Nicholas Flamel entrusted Dumbledore to oversee it being guarded in Gringotts, far from Paris, because otherwise, why would it be in a vault there in the first place and not in the safe little, what's the word I'm thinking of? The safe in the house that we see Flamel in Crimes of Grindelwald. You know, we saw it in that little safe. So why is it not there? Why is it in the vault in Gringotts? But now, Dumbledore. So, wrapping that up, the thought is there was some kind of attempt to take the stone from Flamel's house, and that's when Flamel brought in Dumbledore. Dumbledore put it in Gringotts, but now Dumbledore has reason to believe it's not safe enough in Gringotts and is moving it to Hogwarts. And he's right. Letting Harry witness its removal plants the seed that if someone does break into the vault, will Harry hear about it? Will he put two and two together? Is he curious? Is he clever? Here's test one. We also have to consider that Dumbledore knows the prophecy. He knows that the Dark Lord gave him power that he knows not, and that's the key to defeating him. But what's that power? His mother's love is the protection. But is that all? Is there something else? Perhaps the connection of the minds, the Horcrux inside, Parseltongue. We don't know all of this stuff yet, so maybe Dumbledore just wants to see what foundation Harry has, to set him on the course of being groomed for this mission, and maybe suss out a little bit of what might this power that the Dark Lord gave him be. Does Dumbledore already think that it's just love, or does he have to kind of see what goes on throughout Harry's life to see maybe if there's something else? Maybe he can do something that we don't expect. But seeing the stone removed from the vault, that's step one. Now we watch, and we see what happens next. And we're not the only ones watching. Dumbledore is watching, because it's his plan. If these kinds of theories and speculations do intrigue you, we do a lot more of this over at Theory Corner on Patreon. You can become a patron for these types of bonus episodes, other exclusive content, plus early access to ad-free podcast episodes. But let's get back to the direct chapter. We have our money, we have our plot device, our first test from Dumbledore. Now we need our pencils and our notebooks, and we're going to go to school. Harry ogles the whole time he's in Diagon Alley. He gets his books and all that stuff. We get our first run-in with who we later learn is Draco Malfoy. And already Harry doesn't like this kid, which is understandable. He's kind of the worst. He's already talking some of that pure blood mania he's learning at home. He's already showing he's a spoiled little rich kid. He's already talking crap about Hufflepuff, and he's talking crap about Hagrid, and he's already making Harry incredibly uncomfortable. And this is where we learn a little bit more about Harry's character. His instincts shine through that this isn't the type of person he wants to be around. But he does spark some conversation about Quidditch, which becomes important later, and Hagrid buys Hedwig as a birthday present, who becomes beloved by all, and one of the most tragic losses of the series that we're not ready to talk about yet. And then we get to the wand shop. This is an interesting little bit where we're introduced to Olivander. He gets to try like 100 different wands, definitely not just 3, starting with the kind that his parents had, which is glossed over a little bit, but it's a nice little moment to think that that's as close as he's ever been to having something of theirs outside of physical appearance and DNA. Which is really sad that one of them didn't hook up and choose him, because it would have, obviously been a nice little tie to his parents, but that's not where the story needs to go. Harry finds his magical soulmate, the Holly and Phoenix Feather Wand, the combination of champions, of course. Olivander tells him that Voldemort's wand had the same core from the same phoenix. We later learn that this phoenix is Fawkes and is Dumbledore's flying companion. And more of Harry's character shows when he's out. He's kind of out. He's put off. He's uncomfortable by Ollivander's speech about expecting great things and how Voldemort did great things, albeit terrible. And this isn't even in my notes, but it just popped into my head just now. I'm sure somebody's asked this before, and I don't have a theory. I don't have a question. Well, maybe a theory might be coming to me. Why did Fawkes's feather wand choose Voldemort in the first place? Is there something to that? Was there always some sort of predestined meeting between then Tom Riddle and the coming decades later Harry Potter, and that's why there was only 2 wands? They were only ever going to basically be designed to face off against each other. Weird. Anyway, I literally can't explain it beyond that, but it does seem strange that Dumbledore's Phoenix is the one that gives the feather to Tom Riddle to be later the serial killer Voldemort. There's got to be something there that I just am not grasping. Anyway, in this moment, we're already getting a glimpse of Harry's dislike of dark magic before he even knows what it is. It's a trait we later learn that he shared with his father James, and that trait fueled his dislike of Snape growing up, a feud that would go a long way towards shaping Harry's life completely. Snape was obsessed with the dark arts. James hated them. These two hated each other. Snape followed dark magic to becoming a Death Eater. James joined the Order of the Phoenix to fight the Death Eaters. Snape shares part of the prophecy with Voldemort. James qualifies as a target in said prophecy by defying Voldemort. Voldemort kills Lily and James based on the prophecy Snape shared, while Snape regrets this and ultimately protects Harry from being killed by Voldemort and works with Dumbledore as a double agent. He doesn't regret James's death. Nobody can say that. He hates James still, and hates Harry because of his hatred for James. All of this impacts Harry's life literally on a day-to-day basis, from baby to forever. And it all starts right here. Hagrid and Harry grab some food, and he drops him back at the Dursleys with his ticket for the train, not telling him how to get onto the platform at all. Spoiler, we're going to talk about that in our next episode, and there's kind of a juicy theory that goes along with it. With that, we can get into our scouting report segment.